Hey guys, Jeremy here from School of Wok, back again for Wok Wednesdays, and this week it's a really classic home Japanese dish, Japanese curry and rice. Don't forget to subscribe, like, hit the notification bell, do a little jig and enjoy the show. The first thing you want to do is get your rice on, and I've got some Japanese rice here. You want to wash your rice really well. So you're talking 5-6 times, washing through with cold water until it runs clear. Next with the rice, you want to bring it to boil, but with I've measured about 1 1/4 water to rice. And I just use my hand and press my hand on top of it. If the water hits just to the top knuckle, your palm of your hand is sitting on the rice, that's enough water. Pop a lid on, bring the water to a boil. Once it's vigorously boiling, turn the heat down to low heat, let it simmer. It takes about 10-15 minutes for the water to fully evaporate. Once it's fully evaporated, switch it off and leave the rice for about 15 to 20 minutes to steam in its own steam. Right, onto the curry. Now, we're starting with a roux, and a roux is definitely not a Japanese cooking technique. Clearly comes from the French, and that is a mixture of flour and butter, like cooked flour and butter, to create this sort of thick paste that we then thicken sauces with. I'm going to get the butter in, put the flour in, but the difference between this and a classic French roux is that it's going to be a spiced roux, so I'm going to add some spices to the roux and get it to a nice pasty consistency, take the roux out, and then continue with the curry. So you want a couple of knobs of butter on a medium to low heat. You're going to melt that butter through. Once it's fully melted, then you're going to add 2 tablespoons of flour. That's just plain flour, and mix that in well. Now, along with that, you can see that consistency. It's not like too thick a paste right now, but it will become more pasty in a second. Along with that, we've got about a tablespoon of curry powder. I'm going to go for a heaped teaspoon of garam masala. This is really very, very simple home cooking. Something you could easily cook on a midweek, for a midweek dinner. I'm just going to put a little bit of paprika into that, so about half a teaspoon, and give that all a mix round into that buttery, floury paste. And you can see now the paste has become much drier from that mix, that spice mix. Now I'm going to put a little pinch of salt into that, and then a tablespoon of light soy, and a couple of spoons of mirin. Let's go for 3. Mix that again. Every time we add liquid to this, you want to mix it well so it all sort of combines together nicely. Got some honey in there for sweetness, so a tablespoon of honey is plenty. And then at this point, we're still on a low heat. I've got some fresh chicken stock here, which I'll use some for the roux, and then a little bit more, and then the rest will go into the actual curry. And the reason why I'm putting stock in now is I kind of want to get this to a point where it's more of a thick dripping consistency, so that when I combine it with the curry later on, it's not sort of lots of congealed sort of blobs of curry paste that's going into the curry to thicken it up. Might need a little bit more stock. Almost looks a little bit caramelly. You can see now I've got a much more of a dripping consistency in that sauce or that roux, which I'll use to make up the curry. I'm going to take all this out, give the pan a quick clean, and then I'll start to chop up my veg and finish off the curry. So the curry sauce, or the roux for the curry sauce has been made. And as I said, that is really the hardest part of this recipe. Everything else is very, very simple, and it's there to be simple because it's one of those tasty but easy things to do at home. Onion, I'm going to use this whole onion actually because I want to get a whole load of flavour in to the base of the curry. And I'm going to go for quite large wedges of onion. I'm going to put that onion on right now because I want to cook it and soften the onion, but I don't want to brown it too much. I kind of want it to soften and bring out its sweetness. So give it a stir, but have it on a medium heat, not too high. So as I say, what you want to do is sweat your onions down and just bring out all the sweetness and allow them to get really nice and soft without browning too much. Let that cook through for the next 5 minutes or so. Whilst that's happening, I'm going to slice my potato, carrot. One of the nice things about this dish for me is that it's the way it's so simple, and things like your potato, they sort of bring out, it really brings out the sweetness or the natural sweetness of the potato. That's going to go in along with my onions, and I'm just doing random sort of wedges. Your carrot, very similar. Random wedges is fine, but keep it chunky, you know. All of that straight over into the pan. Now you want to continue to sweat your onions, and now you're sweating your carrots and potatoes. And what we're trying to do is draw out the sweetness from those simple ingredients. This will take sort of 5 to 6 minutes of cooking through before I then start to build my curry sauce over the top of that. You want your potato to at least half cook before you do anything else. Last thing to chop up is your chicken. Got this corn-fed chicken here. And we're just going into large dices of chicken. And this chicken will go in very last because I don't want to overcook it. And it cooks through very quickly. I'm going to turn the heat up slightly, just to a medium heat. It was on a low heat. I'm going to get my roux back in. I want to use all that roux. And you can see now why we took the roux out originally. So that we could sear and or soften those onions nicely with a clean saucepan. You want to try not to break your potato up too much. Just give it a nice stir through. And then we're going to bring the heat up again. So on a medium to high heat now. I'm going to finish this off. So add a bit more stock and just give that a light stir. Bring that to a boil. Add a bit more stock. Now those chicken pieces quite thick, but not whole breast of chicken. Just take about 8 to 10 minutes to cook. You want to add a little bit of stock at a time, and then it will reduce as it's cooking again. And you want to get it to a point where it's got that nice sort of wrapping curry sauce consistency. It's the type of dish that, you know, if you've got small kids and you want to try and introduce them to spices, works really well because it's got that sweetness from the mirin and the honey in there as well. Time to taste it. Check for seasoning. Lovely. A little bit on the sweeter side for me, so I'm going to put another pinch of salt. I should dash a light soy should do it. Now the thickness of the sauce is getting good for me. Another minute or so, and that curry will be done. And my rice steamed away nicely there. And my curry I'm going to get a good bit of that sauce so it can kind of, every bite of rice can get some of that sauce when you bite into it. Really simple cooking that. It takes a little bit of time, a little bit of love, but not too much. Your Japanese curry and rice. Get a bit of that chicken, potato, some of the rice. Let's just soak that rice in the sauce a little. This dish reminds me of growing up in Singapore. I used to have my packed lunches and my mum would make me fried rice and put it into a little thermos sort of lunch box. But then my Japanese friends would come in with food like this packed into their own, so we wouldn't have sandwiches. And we'd always do swaps at lunchtime because I'd be bored of my mum's fried rice. Sorry, Mum. And it was just so simple, but it was so tasty and something different. If there's any dishes like this that you guys can think of that you really love because there's different techniques from different parts of the world or different countries thrown into the same pot, let us know in the comments below. And don't forget, guys, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, like, hit the notification bell, and enjoy your Asian cooking.